Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Next Level Podcast. I'm Carm, and at the end of the day, I will be your guide to the next level. Joined, as always, by my lovely and talented co-host, ffxi. How we doing, Claire?
Doing well. Need to really make that sound clip for the Twitch stream of you saying at the end of the day.
It's gonna go places. I feel it catching on already. The next level's already caught on. Everybody loves it. And I mean, what could be better than at the end of the day that you're just going to really enjoy everything that comes out of my mouth, right?
All the things coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, kind of walked into that one. Anyway, so we'll just ignore everything I just said. Anyway, welcome to the episode. How are you doing, Claire?
I've done so much Ambuscade this month, just helping people get equipment, getting capes and upgrades, and helping build people in the link shell. Also helping people make Empyrean harps, helping you get Alexandrite, which I actually do have some that I need to trade you because I forgot to do that earlier. And also losing my mind on this crafting shield. But I am less than 20% done. Oh, I have less than 20% remaining of the crafting shield spirit stage. I'm so excited, and I'm about to waste so much gil just to finish it because I'm ready for this thing to be done at this point. It's been busy.
I was gonna say, like I've always told you, I just don't have. I don't think I have the brain power to sit there and just grind that shield. But I guess I've never tried, so I've never really wanted it that bad. I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm kind of like, eh. But I'm proud of you for all the work you've done on it. Believe me, it's really impressive. But I just don't know if it's for me.
I don't know. People see me working on it, and they're like, "You're just standing there, not doing anything." And I was like, on my end, there's a bunch of lights happening, and flashes, and explosions, and you just don't get to see it when you're, standing in Port Juno and somebody's staring at you from behind and is like creeping down your neck.
That's fair. Yeah, I did play 14 for a little bit, and I really enjoyed the crafting system in 14. It's just going back to the way it is in 11 would be kind of like, eh.
Yeah, that true RNG. Although the shields should help. We won't necessarily remove it, but at least I'll feel better at myself because I'll actually see that HQ animation more often. Or, I'll lose millions of gil and be really sad about it. We'll see.
I've never really taken you for a gambler, but hey, I'm ready to see this new side of ffxi, everybody.
But I mean,
welcome.
Play Corsair. I play Corsair all the time.
That's not really a gamble, because you just
I gamble on rolls.
No. You don't gamble on rolls. You take your job abilities to the next level. Like we're getting ready to go into Odyssey. Shit! I just busted. I got a wild card to get my. I'm like, what? No, wait, what? No, God.
No, I don't wild card. I run back to the Moogle and go reset everything, and then do my little walk of shame back.
I know I was being a little exaggeratory, but hey, it's dramatic effect.
Mer has a story of me on Corsair where I'm in Uttergan doing assaults, and I always put up Bolter's roll, and I got a 9. I was like, okay, so then I did Snake Eye and I got a 10, and I random dealed. I didn't get Snake Eye back, so I wild card to get Snake Eye back, and that run's not very far. And Mer's like, I think you spent more time trying to get an 11 than you were actually running.
Yes, 100%. I would agree with that.
Hey, I got my 11 though, and I was very proud of myself.
You risked it all. It wasn't really a risk. I think you knew what was going to happen. But
I did. But you know what? I don't care. I got that 11. And then shortly after that, actually, somebody was like, why are you speed hacking? And I'm like, I'm on Corsair with Bolter's roll.
Speed hacking.
All the speed hacks. It was great.
They call our ffxi the speed hacker.
Yes, totally.
Well,
but anyway, I know you are very passionate about this topic, and I have a feeling that this topic is going to take us longer than our normal episodes. So what about it, Carm? Are we going to take this topic, as you would say, to the next level?
I have to talk about my experiences in this update or this patch in this wonderful world of what's the word I'm looking for here? Campaigns that we have going on.
Oh
Because
my
I've
goodness.
really had a lot of fun with this campaign. Like, I'm really excited about all the things I've been doing in game, and I have to tell you about the trip to Michigan. Like, it was so fun. Like meeting Funk and his wife it was a lot of fun, and it was really good people. But I one thing I noticed about Michigan is like the Southern hospitality was not there. I would go to a gas station in the morning and like my girlfriend was laughing at me the entire time because I'd like hold doors for people. I'd say, wave good morning, say hi, and people looked at me like I was a psychopath. Like everybody thought that I was like this creepy person for just like talking to people and saying hi. They're uh, like people would walk by me and they would like look at the ground, intentionally not making eye contact to not have to like say hi or feel obligated to wave or anything like that. I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay. But
Gosh,
obviously
Carm.
Obviously Funk and his wife weren't like that. But yeah, shout out to Funkworks because it was a really great time. We really did have a lot of fun, and again with this campaign, like if you're not taking full advantage of everything this campaign has to offer, you're missing out. Because I've mastered Samurai, I've mastered Geomancer, and now I've mastered Puppet Master, all in this campaign, and I'm having so much fun with Puppet Master and Samurai.
Hey, Carm.
Yeah.
By the time this recording comes out, the campaigns will be over.
So I hope you all had fun with the campaigns.
But Carm, we have the new campaign starting on the 5th, so
That's
you're
true.
covered. And a lot of them that were in this one are being repeated in the next one. So if you guys haven't seen the next campaigns, it is going to be a split campaign, so they'll have some of the same campaigns going throughout the entire month of August, and some of them they will be ending on the 22nd and bringing up new ones on the same day. So definitely check out which campaigns are happening when, so that way you can take full advantage, as Carm took full advantage of this month's campaigns.
Yeah, I seriously was just so happy with this month's campaigns. I think they were great.
So what did you do through all of this month's campaigns?
Not the voracious resurgence, which I should have been doing. But yeah. Side note: you should definitely do the voracious resurgence. A lot of CP, a lot of CP. I hung out with a lot of birds at the new Colibri camp. Got feather tickled a lot, but you know, it happens. All in all, it was a great time. We've done Dynamis quite a few times as far as the farms, the Statue Crusher campaign, the Omen Light campaign has been really good to us. I mean, we just got a Nekmadu and a Sherida earring right in the last white light of this Omen thing. So, I mean, these campaigns are there. They're legit. I hope everybody took advantage of them. I hope everybody continues to take advantage of them because it really is SE helping us out.
But Carm, the big question is, did you get Phalanx +5 on your equipment?
Why? Why do you just have to take that dagger and stick it straight in my heart and like just no? Osim and I are still not on talking terms. I give him my stuff every day and he kind of gives me the middle finger. I did see a couple Phalanx +2s, so I know it's in his repertoire to do for me. He's just decided that I don't deserve the Phalanx +5.
Oh, I'm sorry you didn't get it. I stopped doing OC augments a long time ago because I never got anything good. And I mean, a lot of my pieces that I had from Rise and Jima did get replaced from a lot of the Odyssey equipment and with the Odyssey augments as well. But I know, like, your Phalanx +5 can't get replaced by those. Well, okay, no, One Piece did, but
Yeah, the
Besides the point.
the Secpada pants were nice. It made one less piece I have to deal with Osim for, and if Effie feels generous enough to give me more, then I'll be so happy to not have to deal with Osim. But unfortunately, that's still a battle.
Well, you never know.
Still a fight.
That new event's going to be coming out here in the August update, which should be right around the corner because a lot of the common trends is when the new campaigns are announced, roughly either slightly before those campaigns, they usually do the update. So with the campaigns going on August 5th, we could anticipate them to have the August update sometime next week or this week when the episode is released.
Yeah, it would be nice to. I mean, I can sit here and dream about Phalanx +5 on Paladin Empyrean Body, but well, it might be a pipe dream, but we'll see. I believe.
Crossing fingers for you, Carm.
And a lot of people I've talked to as well have had really good luck with the Goblin.
Right?
Yeah,
Been,
I'm not one of them. I am
either. I mean, I get rocks. I've gotten bird feathers. I've gotten what was the most recent thing Ava got? The Moblin ash or something. The fire sand. That's what it is. From
I
the
get
Moblins.
I get Limbus items. I get iron arrowheads. Pretty much everything, but what I get pup attachments. So I mean, not what I want. But hey, it's free stuff. Essie's giving it to us. We get a shot. We get it. You get excited. Like you log on. You're like, okay, today's the day. The Goblin's going to be my friend. Today is the day. And you walk over and you just get another big middle finger from another NPC. But hey, some people have really made out like a bandit from this Goblin.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. And I mean, I wish I had that luck. I sadly don't. I think the only luck that I've had is just through a Montrove, and it hasn't even been recent, but that's usually where I've gotten a few good items, and a lot of them haven't even gone to myself, like they've gone to other people because I don't have a job that could utilize that piece of equipment, but you know, at least it's better than nothing, like not getting
It's
anything
true.
from either the Goblin or a Montrove.
You do feel good even when you get something and it doesn't have to be for you. Yeah, you'd prefer that it goes to you, but at the same time, you like it's kind of like that warm feeling. Somebody else is really excited because of something I did.
Mm-hmm. I really like helping people though and helping them gear up, which is what I've really been enjoying with this link shell and like talking to people about different gear sets and even showing different tanking mechanics or different fighting styles that you can do with different jobs. I mean, Mur was showing off holding a mob on Bard or even holding a mob on his Dancer, which does really well at tanking. Those sort of different mechanics that people don't really talk about a whole lot, especially for those jobs that don't really get a lot of light shined on them either.
Boy, it's like you're like spoon feeding, just reeling it in a little bit for what the episode of the day is. Like, it's like you were just like, oh, I love it. But so our episode of the day kind of goes back and it goes hand in hand with our gear swap and everything else, building correct gear sets, things like that. We're calling this episode "Know Your Role and Shut Your Mouth." No, know your role. We're not going back
Gosh,
to the
you're
good
gonna
old
be
days of the
super
WWF.
aggressive.
You don't remember The Rock, WWF? Know your role, shut
I
your mouth.
I didn't watch wrestling.
WCW, wrestling. You
I
didn't
wasn't a
watch, wrestling?
Okay, so I had brothers, but they weren't into wrestling. They were into quad racing and quad jumping. So I watched a lot of motocross than I did wrestling at all.
Oh, well, okay. Motocross, I don't got nothing for.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
I got nothing for it either. So you're not alone. But
But it's
that's
time
just
to
what I
know your
got.
role. So, I mean, we kind of break down knowing your role and how you can fit into every party and every group that you go into, and kind of like the four basic ideas of tank, healer, DPS, and support, and all this stuff. But the fun thing about this game is it's not Final Fantasy XIV, where you queue up and you either queue as tank or healer or DPS, and that's what you're doing. You're joining a party with 6 people who could be doing something completely different than the last time you partied with any of these people or any of these jobs. You could get a random person that's coming in and has a completely wonky build, or you get different weapons, you get people using different weapon skills. You've got all these different things that are going on, and you just get this opportunity in this game to adapt your playstyle, to change what you're doing, to support the party that you're going in. And I think it's a really important part of this game and something that is fun to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, I know you and I have had multiple conversations just in depth about the jobs that we particularly play and if we think we could utilize them in not always unusual ways, but changing them up to be able to fit into a certain situation to see if it's possible. Mainly for Odyssey purposes, with the fact that you're losing your sub job and just making sure we have the DPS output while still being reliable on our jobs and for the strategy that we're even needing.
Yeah, I mean, you think about tanking, a lot of times people just be like, oh yeah, Paladin, Rune Fencer, basic tanks that just hold hate and stuff like that. But even those 2 jobs can do a whole lot of things. So you've got your basic taking concepts, and then you've got Ninja that's kind of recognized as a tank, when you can exploit mechanics and really kind of do weird things with Ninja. It's not the all the time tank that you really want it to be. And don't get me wrong, I've tried to throw it in a lot of different places. But there are times when it's just not right to use a ninja. And that's kind of like understanding the job and, once again, knowing your role.
Yeah, I
And
know.
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I know like a lot of people undermine ninjas, but ninjas are really nice tanks because of they have the ability Yonin, which can help them increase being able to hold hate as a ninja in general. And then they also have their mythic as well as their SU5 weapon that can help provide enmity generation. The SU5 is amazing for it because of the fact with the you gain enmity for every shadow that you cast, which is fantastic, but there's certain mechanics like you were talking about where the moves that monsters are using can be absorbed by shadows, or they have an aura effect that just says, inhibits blocking or shielding, which then um I said blocking and shielding, those are the same thing. Parrying and shielding, which can slow down a paladin or a rune fencer, but ninja can still provide the DPS output that you need in order to have a faster fight with safety because of those shadows just being absorbed instead of taking damage.
Yeah, and the great thing about Fudo Masamune, the Ninja SU5, is not only does it give 10 enmity for every shadow you have on you, but it's also giving you 15 attack for every shadow. So it's also no slouch as far as DPS comes. I get some really good Blade 10s when I'm tanking, and you don't lose that much accuracy from using Yonin. You do lose a little bit, but you also have Gekka to get enmity, and Ninja can crap out some enmity. They have a crap ton of enmity on their build. Like, my ninja has way more enmity than my paladin is ever going to get, but my paladin has more tools. But when my ninja starts getting ahead and really starts getting things moving, and I'm able to spam Yutsusumi-san over and over again for enmity, it's just like, holy crap! You don't need anything else.
Yeah, and one of the things that usually makes Rune Fencer a very popular tank is the fact that they can do DPS output as well too to also be able to keep hate, which is something paladins usually lack in, is being able to maintain hate through DPS. So ninjas can also come in with that in play as well too, and be able to hold hate just through DPS output.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to tank, and I mean, Odyssey has definitely opened our eyes to all those different things. Because, I mean, think about at least three of our 6 Odyssey strategies. We use Warrior and Dancer for Zevioso. We use Dark Knight for Embos. We use monk and blue mage for end guy, like these are all fulfilling the tank role that are normally not thought of in this tanking perspective. And it's finding where you fit into every group and understanding the tank role and understanding what your party needs you to do each time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really shut down Dancer as a tanking class, but they don't realize that they do get tools like No Foot Rise, which can help reduce the amount of damage they take in. Even if when it's been up for a little bit, it goes down to just even a 20% minus damage taken minus, which is still significant that they can keep up a DPS output like you were talking about, still have enough evasion. I mean, they have Provoke, it's called Animated Flourish, and the timer recast is similar to Provoke in itself, and it doesn't take away from any of their damaging output flourishes as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, Dancer is really underutilized pre-Odyssey, I think, and Odyssey's kind of let it shine a little bit more and come back into the picture. I mean, all the things, I mean, we'll talk about it in actually it can fill all 4 roles. So we'll talk about Dancer in every single role and bringing all the utility that Dancer brings, but it also is just really solid with Fan Dance and with everything else it has to bring and enmity tools.
Yeah, I know a lot of people get worried about using Fan Dance on Dancer because it does give away not being able to use Sambas. So you do lose the ability to use Drain Samba, Aspir Samba, or Haste Samba. While Haste Samba isn't needed as much as a main dancer, Drain Samba can be useful when you're trying to tank and just have those clutch random cures from mobs that you're fighting. But Dancer also does really have high evasion, which makes them a nicer alternative to a ninja tank, but they can also cure themselves too and be self-sufficient. Like in Odyssey, where you lose your sub job, ninja doesn't have that sub dancer to help maintain itself by it when it's all by itself, while dancer could do it regardless of having a sub job.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to think about what your job can do without a sub job once you start getting into Odyssey, once you start getting into these harder fights, these larger tier NMs that just have different mechanics. And you have to think about, especially if you're trying to do ×3 farms where you can only bring one job to each fight, and you have to start thinking, okay, what can I put in this role? What job can I do this for? And for those jobs that you all want to master and you all want to be proficient at, you've got to think about every situation that you can throw this job into. And when you go into a group and when you start doing all these Odyssey things or you start doing the new content, things like that, you can think, hey, my dancer could jump into this spot, my warrior could jump into this spot, my paladin could heal this. Whatever you want, whatever you need in your group, you've got to be able to say, I can confidently utilize my job in this way.
Yeah, and I know you were talking to me about Warrior recently, and I was telling you that one of the most underutilized weapons that Warrior gets access to is Bravura, which is an amazing tanking type great axe. It gives you DT as well as regen plus 13, which can help in regards to tanking that you can be semi self sufficient, while Warrior does need some help in regards to keeping itself alive. It does gain a lot of the same tools that Paladin has in regards to equipment for enmity generation. And then they can also gain enmity from some of their abilities that don't necessarily decrease your defense, but just using Warcry in itself or even having retaliation up can help keep its enmity high as well too.
Not to mention a great phalanx build. I mean, they can get just as much phalanx as paladin can, besides pre-wind.
Yeah,
But
which helps when somebody's casting phalanx on them. So definitely if you have a scholar sub red mage or even just a main red mage sub scholar that's able to provide phalanx on a warrior, it really does shine very well.
yeah, so that's understanding the role. It's understanding what you're doing, how you prepare everything. It's building those sets, that phalanx set that somebody says, hey, I'm about to do a long AoE phalanx. You hit that macro, you switch into your phalanx set, and boom, you've got that long phalanx, and you're just going to take less damage, and you're going to fulfill that role even better.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked about how we've been using how we've been using Dark Knight on Embos, and a lot of people just see Dark Knight as a sacrificing DD class, but you can build it to be more defensive in regards to having Dread Spikes up and having the ability to raise its HP with Drain 2 and Drain 3. It's really an interesting concept that you can utilize this DPS output for a tanking class.
Yeah, Dark Knight is a really hardy DD. I mean, even with what the hell is the relic called? Catastrophe is a weapon skill. Apocalypse is the
Apocalypse.
weapon. I'll get there. I was gonna get there, I swear. But like APOC Darks, even back in the day, could do some amazing solo things, and they still can. Like this job has got a lot of survivability, a lot of things that it can just throw together and be like, "Woohoo! Here we are!" And they'll just survive, and they can be hardy, and they can still pump out. Maybe not as much as somebody who's not trying to fill that tank role, but you're fulfilling that tank role while also fulfilling a damage role. So you're doing multiple things. You don't always have to be the top DPS or the top person on the enmity charts, but you've got to be there in case something happens. And that's when you've got to understand that, hey, if I'm the backup tank, I got to be ready to switch on a dime if something were to happen.
Yeah, it's just like we have a player in our link shell named Avalon who's an amazing Dark Knight and does utilize his drain spells. And we've made a couple of jokes about how you could cure Avalon and it'll do 1% of his HP because he's drained so much in regards to getting his HP so high, which is really nice and it keeps him alive in a lot of the content that we do as well too.
Yeah, it's fun to see people take all their jobs, dare I say, to the next level, but take all these jobs and really utilize them to a point that a lot of people don't think about. And it's been really fun to see all these different ideas. I mean, even in our link shell with a lot of somewhat newer players and people that are still gearing up, they've brought a lot of new ideas, and we've been able to try new things and new strategies.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't really give Puppet Master a whole lot of credit. I know when I used to run Dynamis Wave 3, we had a player named Wom Wom who was an amazing puppet master who could hold the fetter and one side of the entire mobs on his puppet just by itself and just carry it through essentially. And people think that puppet can only do solo tanking, which you really need to know how enmity works in regards to puppet master and being able to switch the enmity from the master to the puppet in order for it to tank multiple things. But it does it very well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different strategies and ideas that people don't think about just because there's always been a very meta minded mentality around the game where, okay, yeah, you got your tanks, you got your healers, you got your basic DPS, white mage is a healer, samurai and dark knight are DPS, paladin's a tank, and that's all you think about. But you don't think about throwing these other things, like even talking about evasion tanks where you get, I mean, Blue Mage can really get some serious evasion from all their traits if they set the right things. Thief being the best evasion there is. Like, ninja evasion tanking is a lot of fun. I've done that a few times in Omen, and it's actually really enjoyable to do, just to watch miss, 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 miss. And it's fun to get all these different builds and try these new ideas and find different ways to throw this wonky idea you had at content and be like, okay, cool, this works.
Yeah, I remember talking to a thief once about their SU5 with Pass C because I was interested in regards to really how well it worked out. And they were like, oh, I try to pull as much hate as possible to try to tank some of these mobs just so that way I can just basically weapon skill back to back to back to back with never actually having to swing in between because they're gaining so much TP with all their evasion that they have on that job class and they'll just kill mobs so fast with it.
Yeah, it's a great feeling when you actually just take something that not everybody thinks is the right way to do it, or you take something that maybe isn't viewed as the ideal way to play and you just make it work. At the end of the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fast you kill something as long as it dies. I mean, yeah, in Odyssey you have a time limit, but as long as you kill it in 15 minutes, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you got there. It matters that it died.
Yeah, and just being able to see a concept in regards to how well it works, and then you can figure out ways to tweak that set in order to really utilize that particular thing that you're going for. I know when we were doing Odyssey, you brought up the fact of doing a counter tank build for your paladin, and I was like, but don't you lose quite a bit of survivability on your paladin with exchanging it for that counter set? And it really hasn't shown being a hindrance at all. And I was kind of impressed by it when you came out with it.
Yeah, it's actually a really fun build, especially in Odyssey. One of the things that helps in Odyssey, as well as the evasion sets, is the accuracy on the mobs is actually relatively low. Um, so the evasion and counter breakpoints are a lot lower. So you're able to kind of break the meta and do different things. I mean, I've heard of blue mages running through completely evasive, just running through the zone, never getting hit. There's a lot of different ways and a lot of different ideas you can take to exploit the I guess the weaknesses of Odyssey, and just taking all these different options and throwing different jobs into the tank rolls. I mean, even evasion tank blues, they can still have a lot of enmity generating spells. So you can even have a blue mage that's full evasion tanking a bunch of mobs, and they never have to come out of their evasion set because Naomi's a thing. And it also has a lot of magic accuracy on it. It also has, you can switch to your enmity if you can, but if you don't, there's still a lot of enmity built into a lot of different spells that blue mages have available to them.
Yeah, I know even with not tanking a lot of mobs and just like we were using Blue Mage for Engai recently, just how much you could not take damage from him with all of the AoEs that he does and just his standard attack swings, still be able to survive very well while providing enough DPS to help take down that mob fast enough.
Yeah, blue mage I think is a very, very underutilized job for Odyssey. I think it can provide a lot. It has multiple damage types. It can fill a tank role. It can fill a healer role. It can fill, like, once again, we're getting into the DPS support. Blue Mage is another job that can fill every role and do everything that you want it to do. Um, so I would definitely just think about what you're playing. What can your job do? I mean, if you play Monk, you can make a counter build and just not take damage and counter and add extra damage because you're filling that tank role, but every time the mob swings, you're countering. So you're adding damage now by taking no damage. So
Yeah.
it's just adding all this extra stuff and filling that role of monk or filling the role of tank, but you're also coming as a monk or even a samurai, because I know I made a Segan counter tank or Segan third eye counter build for my samurai recently, and I mean, it even came up as helpful in an omen run where we got pain synced and all of a sudden we needed to scurry, and I just threw JCN on it and sat there and countered the mob to death.
Yeah, I remember my friend Uwain when he used to play. He made Safari, which is the relic hand to hand, which does help with the counter builds as well. And him tanking on Monk was always really nice. He had an HP tank or HP counter build, so he had ridiculous amount of HP to keep it very high, and he could take so many different abilities and nukes and just kind of brush it off and then just counter mobs to death. It was really wonderful
Yeah.
to see.
That counter damage is sick.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I mean, even Blue Mage, I keep talking about Blue Mage, but even Blue Mage can get a really strong counter build with Orcish counter stance and the Ambuscade Cape, and you've got the necklace and all these other things that can add counter. So well, again, this is like we're only on tanking, and we've got all these different builds and all these different ideas and all these different jobs that can fill the tanking role. And then, of course, we haven't talked about pet tanks. You've got Puppet Master. You've got some kind of Beastmaster. Beastmaster Enemies kind of wonky, but you can still somewhat kind of tank, but not in a huge party setting. I mean, maybe you can. I've never seen it.
Yeah, we talked about Wom tanking on Puppet Master in Dynamis, but I know you're kind of stepping into that a little bit with how you just recently mastered your Puppet Master on Karmis and you brought it to Omen. And you were talking to me earlier, you were kind of worried about tanking on Puppet. And I was like, oh no, it'll do fine because I've brought out Ava's Puppet and tanked with it before. So I understood how well it could do it. Also having Cavendish before, that was another Puppet Master that I really enjoyed playing with and getting to know, and showing how well Puppet Master could be a tank in really any situation.
Yeah, Puppet Master's another one of those jobs that can fill all four roles, that can do everything really solidly, and you just have to understand the builds, you have to understand the build path, you have to understand the job, and really put all of your interest into what you're doing and how you can help your party, how you can help your group. I mean, even if you're attacking with your puppet and you've got a kind of a hybrid build going on where your pup still has enough DT to survive, but at the same time you're still attacking with it and you're adding damage and you're adding utility and you're adding that tank and you've got all these extra things going for you.
Yeah, it was when I was talking to him, when I was talking to Cavendish, sorry, I should specify, in regards to even just setting up the puppet itself, in regards to which body and head combination could really help in different scenarios. I mean, you typically see the White Mage hat and the Valor body, which has the shield attached to it for standard tanking sets, but he went on to even talk about using the Valor head and the Harlequin body piece in order to make a more magic defensive tank. And if you know you're going up against something that'll constantly use magic abilities or even just cast a lot of spells versus the physical attributes as well.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with the job. I'm just starting to dive into it and starting to learn about it, and I'm nowhere close to actually fully understanding the job, but I've got enough and I can see what the job is capable of. So really excited to learn more about it. And another tank that I really enjoy playing and throwing into opportunities that I have to use it is Red Mage Sub Paladin or stuff like that. You get a lot of shield skill, you get some great stuff. The spam on flash is insane. Uh, like when you can utilize Red Mage into this set and into this opportunity, I think it really does have a chance to shine. It's very self-sufficient. You get composure, so your buffs last quite a while. You don't have to waste as much time buffing. You can still bring all your debuffs, all of your utility. You can still cast your haste spells and your buffs to the other members of your party as well. So you've got all these different things you can bring, and you can hold the mob. Like, again, it's just what all can you bring to your group? And this is all about what your job can do in every situation.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely looking in, just really learning the job in itself and what it can provide to the group and being able to tweak the sets. I mean, Merce brought out Lean a couple of times on Bard, and his Bards had to tank a couple of things in order to, if, like you said, when things happen to go wrong and we die to Pain Sink and the Bard's the only thing left and the Bard's just tanking it on weakened DDs and being able to do those particular things, or doing ambuscade and having to tank as mob by itself and not have to worry about getting assistance from other people. Like, it's interesting what he's done with her Bard.
Yeah. And it's just his passion about hit the Bard job and really taking. I was going to do it, but I thought about it. But really just taking all that understanding and putting it in and just being like, okay, this is what this job really can do. And looking at the overall, just the moment of where you're at, like, oh crap, everything's wiping. Some people are like, oh, well, I'm just a DD. I can't really do anything. I'm going to go hide in a corner. No, it's stepping up. It's finding out what your job can do. It's really understanding the moment and throwing yourself in and saying, okay, I can do this. I can utilize this job in this situation to let everybody else take the time to get ready to go. And maybe sometimes it is dropping from the party and sacking a million times while everybody gets in the moment, but that's knowing your role. That's understanding what you're doing. It's just understanding that if you put a debuff on the mob or a damage over time spell and you drop from the party, it's only going to kill you and it's not going to depop, and you can let everybody else get back up and ready to go.
But enough about tanks here. I mean, we have so many other things to talk about as well too. I mean,
Hold on. I got to ask one more thing.
Uh-oh.
Did you ever get to Mazurka tank?
I did not. I was way after the Mazurka tanking days on Bard, sadly.
That was fun. That was fun. Like just sitting there and spamming Mazurka and just not taking damage, and that was fun. I mean, even, but yeah, tanking on Bard, you think about, you're not really doing too much of it now unless, like you said, things are going seriously wrong. But you're still it's taking Bard that everybody looks at Bard and says, okay, well, Bard's just Bard. It's going to provide songs, and that's what it's there for, and that's why we bring Bard. But now you're throwing a different dynamic that it can do. But yeah, let's talk about some healers. I mean, of course, you have to go to White Mage. That's your standard healer. You've got your White Mages, you've got your Scholars that have really come out of the dark with Odyssey. The Scholar has really gotten some great light on it, and it's also a job that can do pretty much anything in the game as well. I mean, I'm not taking my Scholar to tank anytime soon, but
why not?
hey,
You should do it. I believe in you.
I don't know that it's because I haven't taken the time to really look into it. I haven't taken the time to really set in to see if it's possible. But maybe it is.
For the longest time down in the 75 days, you really had White Mage and Red Mage were your two main ones, and then your off ones were Summoner and Scholar. And a lot of people, as Scholar was starting to be used more, really brought it out. It really shined more in the Abyssea era into newer content where people were replacing Red Mage because they're like, oh, Scholar is what Red Mage was supposed to be. And I know we've brought that up a few times when we've talked about the job, but it really does bring another aspect to healing. I mean, it can heal just as well as a White Mage because it gains access to Aura Storm 2, while White Mage, even Sub-Scholar, can only get the tier 1 of that spell. And it gains a lot of gear that White Mage has utility for. I mean, it doesn't get rid of debuffs as well, but it can handle a party very well in regards to the amount of buffs it can provide and just the sustainability it can keep in a party. I mean, you put a Scholar in your party and you'll see that it doesn't really need to cure all that often.
Yeah, when you're not dealing with like high AoE damage and high AoE enfeebles constantly and everything like that, Scholar is a great healer and can really shine. White Mage still is going to be a little bit better when there's a lot of high damage and high enfeeble spells, because if you have to use all of your session or stratagem charges on AoE curing, then you don't have that accession to take away the debuffs as well. So you're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. So White Mage still has its time when it's supposed to be used, but a lot of times now, with all these jobs being taken as tanks and stuff like that, and fulfilling this tanking role, and DT sets getting better, and people truly understanding what's going on in a fight, the Scholar has really been able to jump up and say, hey, watch this, and put Region 5 on everyone, give TP regain, give pretty good bar spells, all the different things that Scholar can bring to a party, as well as be that backup healer and that person who's ready to hit that Cure 4 macro or take off Enfeeble spell, whatever you need him to do as that healer role.
Yeah, what's also really nice about having Scholar in the healer role aspect is they can do enmity manipulation where they can, if you're using a tank that's not a true tank that can cast enmity plus on themselves with either Crusade or through blue magic spells for enmity generation, they can put an enmity plus spell on that particular role and then put enmity minus on everybody else, so that way they don't pull hate as quickly, or that it'll just slightly generate slower for everybody else.
And you also get Caper Emissarius, which is another thing that can really turn the tide if things go wonky.
Yeah, if you have a tank that just goes down and you need it to not be on everybody else on the back line, they can force all of the enmity onto somebody else, which becomes very helpful in a pinch. Or if you're just like, hey, this isn't working, we need to shift it a different direction. Like if you have abilities that people can't pull hate off of a particular mob and omen, and you need it, otherwise this person's going to get terrorized for an extended period of time, they can shove it somewhere else just so that way you can survive and keep the fight going.
Yeah, Scholar just brings a lot. And of course, we're not hating on White Mage. Claire and I are both very passionate about Scholar, but we both play White Mage at a pretty high level as well. So both of these jobs have their time when their role is needed and they can fit this role the best. But it's understanding each of these jobs to where you can say, okay, I think a Scholar would be better here, or okay, I think a White Mage would be better here. But then
Yeah.
you have all your support healers, like the jobs that can kind of fill those roles, like Bard sub White Mage. Now with access to Kiraga 3, and I mean even Bard sub Scholar is getting Cure 4 now. A big accession Cure 4 now that you have 3 stratagems, that's pretty sweet. From a job that is doing a whole lot already, and then now can sit there and, I mean, main heal Shell Sea Farm, main heal really anything, sit there with the Cure 4s, and I mean, Bard gets a decent amount of gear to help the cure. I mean, it gets all the Kakaya gear, it gets all kinds of stuff, but yeah. Gets a lot of stuff.
You're
A lot of
losing it a
stuff.
little bit there.
Yeah.
I
I
remember
was trying to
using
remember all my Bard cure gear, but I just lost it.
Well, and a lot of people I'm surprised haven't moved over to Bard Subscholar, because I used to use it back in the 75 era, and it was an amazing sub job to have. But like you were saying, you have the extra stratagems now, and you gain access to Cure 4. You still have access to Region 3 as well too, which in most other sub jobs you don't gain Region, but Scholar gets regions really early, which makes it easier when you are that sub job class. And with the adjustment they made to sublimation, you really don't need to have sub red mage to keep your MP up, or even having to use ballads on yourself to keep your MP, because you're able to have that sublimation going, and even stacking it with the Embla Sash helps it generate even faster. So having it as a sub job for Bard or Red Mage, or even I've seen Geomancers start using it recently, just to help with the support aspect of being able to heal at more efficiency because you have Penury, which is half cost. Or if you need something where you need the recast back sooner, you can use Celerity, which would help with that as well too. And you could still give yourself the Aura Storm, like we were talking about with White Mage Sub Scholar, which can help boost your cure spells as well too.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Sub Scholar kind of come back into the idea as a sub job for Bard and other jobs, just because there's a lot you can do with it and there's a lot you can add to your party. And people that truly utilize all their gear sets and really start learning about their job can impact this role a lot easier. You're talking the easy, like, how nice is it to have a bard that can assess in Paralina? Because I know my bard idles in a Shira harness, so I rarely ever get paralyzed. The ability to have that accession Paralina is really big. Um, so yeah, it's thinking about all these things. You talk about geomancers too. One of the jobs that a lot of people over the years have been like, oh, you just put up your bubbles and you kind of sit there and chill. But Geo can fill that backup healer role. Geo can fill, like, they can change their bubbles even to support that healing, to support the refresh, to support the regen, to changing your bubbles to think about, okay, well, my tank's taking too much damage. My healer can't keep up, or I can't keep up as the healer. So I'm going to change up my bubbles a little bit just so we can get through the fight.
Yeah, and I know some people, when they hear us talking about Sub-Scholar, are a little weary in regards to the fact that Scholar doesn't gain the ability to have haste. And for bards, it's something to think about when you're looking at your gear sets, because you can cap haste with 2 songs. So that is where, if you don't need to have a haste spell, you can do the Sub-Scholar. But you were talking about Geomancer, and there's so much versatility with Geomancer. Like, you were talking about how you see a tank that's dying, you're like, okay, what is this tank taking damage from? Is it physical? Okay, I can put Wilt down, which will help everybody around that area, regardless if they're in your party or not. Or if you're in a single party and you're like, they're really taking too much from physical and you're standing in there with them, you could do Wilt and Barrier just to really combat that physical damage that's being taken. Or you can do Fend and Fade in order to help with magic as well. If you're like, oh, they're being hit by a lot of magic spells, you can do Vex and Langor to help the entire alliance in order to avoid getting hit by magic. Attunement and Vex. The attunement will help only the 6-man party, but Vex will help the entire alliance.
Yeah, Geo's another job that really gets a lot of cure gear, and I think it's kind of underutilized. I mean, they can use Rayetic +1, so Geos can really pump out some good cures, and a lot of people just either have a bot Geo that follows them around, or it's a Geo that runs in, does their bubbles, and then kind of watches YouTube. It's like, okay, there's a lot more that this job can be doing, and if people started really utilizing everything it can do, we might not see as many need for, maybe we don't need a white mage for this. Maybe we can just bring the Geo and the Geo can cure, or in this case, the healer role. But maybe we can bring, okay, let's bring a puppet master. And pup is one of those things where you can bring that puppet master as the healer, and you can still, once again, do some damage as the master. You don't have to sit there and put all of your focus into this puppet master where you're sitting in the back. You can go in, have your puppet be at range, and you be into the melee and add all the damage, and then your puppet is doing all the healing, because the healing puppet can really do some serious work.
Yeah, in regards, just kind of backtracking a little bit, if you do decide to use the Radic Rod +1 on Geomancer, please note that your cures will be more expensive. So having that Sub-Scholar that we were talking about and being able to use Penury to reduce the cost can help with that additional cost through Radic Rod +1. So just be weary if you're using that. But Puppet Master, like you were saying, it's fantastic. Just remember which headpiece you're using, because the white mage frame will take care of everybody and will throw out Kiragas, which does make it an amazing healer class. You do have the red mage frame, which does prioritize the master over everybody else. It will still take care of everybody else. Just be careful that it may let other people die if the puppet master is also dying, because it does single target cures only. And yeah, single target cures only.
Yeah, there's a lot of options out there, and once again, it's just understanding the job and understanding how your job can really fit this role. Taking things like even the blue mage, we talked about all the different things that blue mage can do, but blue mage can come in as a healer, bring healing breeze, it can bring magic fruit. I mean, there's all kinds of different healing spells that are available to you. to fill that role as a blue mage.
Yeah, they also get Winds of Promi, which is an erasable spell, which can help with AoE
Yeah.
erases. Like if everybody gets bound, you can erase it all from everybody else. If they get a stat down, that can also help as well too. Um, and they have some really nice AoE cures. I know in the beginning, a lot of people were using Healing Breeze and were like, "Yeah, it's kind of okay." But then you start getting, like you were saying, White Wind is an amazing curing spell, and it's fantastic to try to help out in an AoE situation. Or if you just need a single target cure someone, you have Magic Fruit, which can really cure somebody almost, if not up to full, based on your curing builds that you have for your blue mage.
Yeah, blue really does do a lot of cool things, and then you even get into dancers. Of course, dancers, like, Walt's potency is insane. It's actually incredible how much potency there is in waltzes, and how dancers can just sit there and gain infinite TP and just infinitely heal.
Yeah, it was nice that they did that update for Dancer where they did separate all the waltzes so you could do waltz 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 5 without having to worry about them being shared on a timer anymore, especially when it was shared with Divine Waltz and Healing Waltz. And like you were saying, their uh, waltz potency is calculated differently than it is for cure builds, and it does seem like it's significantly higher than either coming from a white mage or we were talking about scholar. They can really maintain a party very well and do it very quickly as well too, with just having the TP generation that they do have.
And once again, you're bringing more roles to this. You're bringing damage, you're bringing utility. I mean, we'll talk more about the support that Dancer brings, but these are all ideas that Dancer is bringing and filling this healer role. Um, so looking at your group and saying, okay, well, we don't have a healer, but we do have a dancer. Maybe that dancer doesn't need to focus all the way on DPS. They don't need to be topping the DPS charts. Right now, we just need them to keep the party alive. Or maybe our white mage died, so our dancer needs to switch over to that healer role. It's understanding the situation, understanding where you're at in the fight. Even going back to, I liked doing this back in the day, but Samurai Sub Dancer with Sobro. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I used to see a lot of people with Soberod being able to help, not necessarily main heal, but keeping people at least alive long enough for a healer job to either gain the MP that they need in order to start being the main healer again, or just if they've gone down and just need to wait for them to get back and kind of reacquainted with everything. They are very useful as a type of healer. I mean, and like I mentioned before, in the 75 era, you had a lot of people using summoners. They had Carbuncle with their healing rubies, Leviathan with Springwater, and then you also have Garuda with Whispering Winds in order to provide additional healing while potentially buffing. They did add an ability to Leviathan that gives, it's called Curing Conduit, which increases your cure received. So this also does help in regards to those abilities that the avatars are using in order to help cure the entire party as well too. But this also enhances those people that are on those support healers like Bard or Geo, in order to assist with those cures as well.
Yeah, a lot of people worry about Summoner from healing just because it doesn't have the support job of White Mage or Scholar or anything like that. But I mean, Carbuncle and Leviathan both bring a lot to a party when it comes to just straight healing. And then you've got also the defensive abilities that you get through like Titan or some of the other ones, the Diablos with his phalanx and things like that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different buffs and aspects that you can bring with a summoner, but they can also provide different debuffs as well too. And we can talk a little bit more about that during the actual supportive portion of this episode.
One thing that I've really found myself doing a lot, for kind of filling that healer role, is when we're kind of short healers and dynamis. I know the last two kind of dynamis runs we've done, we've only brought like one white mage for the entire alliance, And Majesty has really come in handy with being able to cure across parties, and it's still AoEing across that party.
Yeah, Majesty is really broken in that
Yeah.
aspect where like normally a scholar would have to use a session in order to AoE. And funny enough, Majesty and a session have the same animation, but Paladin just gets it for a whole 3 minutes. They can just spam cure anybody in the entire alliance and it would affect that person's party around them. And it's just crazy how fast you do 3 casts and all of a sudden you've cured an entire alliance because Paladin gets cure potency 2 with Majesty just even being active as well.
Paladin also can really bring a lot of refresh gear with it as well. I do have a refresh set on my Paladin just for instances where I need to kind of take a step back and be the healer and fill that role. Just because I know that's something Paladin can very easily take care of. And yeah, unless you sub Scholar, you're not going to get all the Na spells and to cure enfeebles and stuff like that. But it's also a job where if you take hate as a healer or people die, you're going to be able to sit there and turtle up and hold a mob until everybody else can get back up, or you can do whatever. Like, it's not going to be a worry if you take hate as a paladin healing because you're a paladin.
Yeah, I know a lot of people worry that red mage really isn't part of the healer classes anymore, but it's definitely still there because it does gain access to cure 4 and all the other cure spells, and with having it be able to use sub scholar as well too to make those spells AoE, and just taking care of everybody in general does still keep it in that healer class.
Yeah, it kind of falls hard when it comes to Odyssey as far as healing goes, but if you know that, I know for our Procny runs, we've been bringing a red mage for the single target heals because everything's conal, but as well we're bringing a dancer to keep bringing the erase potency. So we're kind of hand in hand healing where we're filling 2 roles, or filling really a support, 2 supports, 2 DPS, or 1 DPS and 1 healer, or 2 healers with 2 jobs. So you're filling like 5 roles. I lost all the math in my head there. I confused even myself. But you're doing all these different things just by understanding that, hey, red mage can bring this is red mage limitation, though. Okay, we bring a dancer as well, and the dancer can really just focus on DPS for a while, but when the red mage hits that wall and they're not able to do this, the dancer can do that.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have those two just even hand in hand with really any combination. But it does help, like you said, fill in multiple different roles in regards to the aspect of your fight. So don't just think that, oh, white mage is the end all be all healer. Well, yes, it has one of the highest cures and it does bring cure skin along with any of the single target cures that it does. There are other options. I know you've even talked about on Karmis going and doing rune sub scholar to have that same aspect with a session. Paladin has with Majesty in order to be able to maintain the entire party and keeping hate at the same time.
Yeah, especially with the introduction of Schrodebelt for Rune Fencer. Yeah, it makes your MP or your cure spells cost a little bit more, but Rune doesn't really care about MP as much as Paladin does, just because you can always throw up Dark Runes and then Vivacious pull some MP back. Or if you've got a refresh, you're really just not worried about MP ever. I don't really think of too many times that I have ever been like, holy crap, my MP on Rune Fencer. It's one of those jobs where, yeah, it's not going to really be that big, holy wow, this is so cool, but at the same time, it's an interesting idea. As long as you can establish AoE hate on Rune Fencer, which is usually pretty easy, as long as like somebody's hitting, like if a bard is sleeping your entire pull, you can drop Valiance, you can drop One for All, you can drop Lament if you've got Epio, and all of a sudden now you're on the hate table and you can spam foil and you've got hate on everything. You don't need to initially tag with those blue spells.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully this helps people be able to think a little bit more about their different healer classes that they can utilize. Again, we're not saying don't use white mages. White mages are amazing for what they do. They're definitely really nice for AoE removal of status ailments as well as AoE cures and even being able to provide those single target cures with cure skin, which I feel some people underutilize cure skin. It's very much a nice useful tool to help to have with your cures as well. Um, but I mean, we also need to talk about DPS aspects, and I know this is thing that people love to do in this game is have their DPS jobs.
Yeah, this is where you get to top the parse and be Mr. Cool and all that other stuff. But sometimes it's not even about being Mr. Cool or whatever you want to call it or topping the parse. It's what you can bring to a party. You think about your samurais, your dark knights, thieves, blue mages, warriors, corsairs, all these different DPS types that you can bring. But what's great about Odyssey and was really opened up is all the different weapon types that each job can bring. A lot of jobs don't really get looked at as that useful for Shield C because they don't have the multiple weapon types that Warrior and Samurai and some of these other jobs do have.
Yeah, I know like Dragoon's one of those jobs that people are like, oh, why would you bring a Dragoon to party? But they can use a bunch of different weapon types. I mean, they can do all three. They have piercing with their pole arms, which is their best weapon. And then they can also do slashing with niggling. And they have powerful Savage Blade sets as well, too. They can also equip a staff, and they do very well with staff weapon skills, including Retribution and Satyr Soul. I'm not Retribution, but Shatter Soul. I can't even say the word right now.
Yeah, Dragoon is definitely one of those jobs, and it's also very hardy for a DD. If it gets in trouble, it has the healing from the Wyvern. It has super jump if it really needs to get away, or like all these different things that it can do. If you're bringing it into an NM, it's very good with enmity control. Um, I've heard a lot of people that use Samurai for Procny, and they just polearm spam. Um, there's a lot of different things that you can do with your DD. And it's not always just about just being that strong DD. Sometimes you need to be part of a skill chain to make other people be able to excel, like a black mage. There's a lot of fights that are just magic focused in Odyssey, where unless you open up a skill chain, you're not going to have the damage. You talk about on go, where you've got a rune fencer and a corsair, and the corsair's not there to do the big dick damage or whatever you want to call it and be the big hero. It's there to open the skill chain for the black mage, so the black mage can do it all.
Yeah, it's really nice to actually be able to see magic bursting coming back into play because for a while after the Geo nerf, where black mages used to be on top, kind of shriveled down and went down to never being even really talked about at all. To now with Odyssey coming out, like you were talking about with Ongo and people trying to do focus, it's really brought magic bursting back into the light and talking about different sets and talking about D-Int, which we've brought up a whole bunch as well too. And so Black Mage in itself is its own type of DPS class in regards to needing that magic, which Scholar can also fill in that role as well too. While Scholar does need more magic accuracy, so it won't have as much umph on those higher level mobs than a Black Mage does, it still can help provide that as well as all the different damage over time thing like helixes that it can provide. A lot of people don't realize that Black Mage can also do status downs with the different dots as well, where you got choke, burn, and rasp. That'll help lower different stats, which can also help increase the damage as well too for people.
Yeah, a lot of people want to get their R15 or the big one's always the R15 Masa and just Fudo all the day long and just be the big Mr. Damage on Samurai. But sometimes the parties need and the group needs or the fight needs just somebody to sit there and close skill chains. So it's better to use the Aeonic and sit there and close radiances or open for people because Samurai's great at skill chaining. Thief is really great at closing skill chains. You've got all these different jobs that can fit in and do skill chain damage. And I really wasn't a huge believer on skill chain damage until I really started playing these DD classes. Apparently Siri was talking to me. But I didn't really get all the hype around the skill chain damage until I started playing these DD classes. And then I started playing Samurai, and I started doing these 4 steps, and I started playing Puppet Master and doing skill chains with my puppet, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot of damage in skill chains that people are just missing out on by just sitting there and spamming weapon skills and not taking advantage of this extra damage. And sometimes that's what your group needs. You can always have that person that is a newer player that is maybe not going to do that much damage with just sitting there and spamming weapon skills, but they've got enough good TP set they can open a skill chain for you. You can close it and do the big damage and hit that big, and then just grit that extra damage, and it makes everybody feel like they're contributing. It gets everybody in, and it's just engaging. It's more fun to me.
Yeah, I know you hear Mur talk a lot about how Dancer doesn't like to play well with others, and it's not necessarily that it doesn't play well with others, is that it does focus primarily on that skill chain damage and being able to dish out those high skill chains and doing it constantly. And you can find people that will work with dancers and being able to utilize it in a group setting to be able to push those numbers. It's the same with Dragoons. Dragoons can push out really high skill chain damage as well too, and I've heard some people mention that one doesn't play friendly with others, but you get a Dancer and a Dragoon together and they make some crazy damage with skill chains, and it's fantastic to watch them talk to each other and just get everything. Like, putting those two even together, they have such survivabilities on their own, and just having them in a party with the Wyvern taking care of the Dragoon and the Dancer either taking care of only itself or the Dragoon, in the amount of damage just being pushed out at the same time is just so incredible.
Yeah, you think about the olden days of Dynamis where everybody had a main assist and you followed around that main assist and everybody attacked the same mob. Those days are not here anymore, and a lot of the DDs that are really trying to top the charts have understood that if they go out and find their own mob and they 3-step it or they 2-step it or they kill it all themselves, like, they're going to get more damage out because they've understood that skill chain damage is the way to go.
But if you can find those groups that do have this synergy that can push out the big damage with having the high skill chains and potentially adding in the magic burst in between as well too, we'll have faster runs on certain mobs. Yes, there are mobs that do have a resistance to magic damage to where the skill chains aren't as utilized, or they may have mechanics like Bumba where you don't want to do skill chains at all. So we're not saying that every single fight you should focus on skill chains. That's where you really want to learn what your fight is going to utilize in regards to these jobs and prepare them for that fight itself.
That's when you must know your role.
Know your role and know your mob.
Absolutely. But
I know
then,
one thing. Hold on. One thing that I know we didn't mention was in this regard with Ninja. You utilized grabbing the karambits from Ambuscade, which is a hand-to-hand, because we have a mob that is resistant to all damage type but blunt, and you've been able to provide some decent numbers with doing hand-to-hand ninja. And a lot of people look at you really funny when they see you with karambits attached, and they're like, why the fuck are you doing that? And you're just like, because this is amazing for the fight that we're doing.
yeah, especially if you can utilize NN on Ninja, you'll really just pump out some exceedingly high. But it's not all about just exceedingly high numbers in the weapon skill. It's just exceedingly high DPS because you're attacking so fast, you're weapon skilling constantly because Karambit gets the bonus TP from crits. And if you can utilize NN, or even if you can't, Ninja still has really high crit rate. So if you sit there and you get these crits rolling, you're going to build TP in like one swing round and just sit there and Asuran Fist spamming. That was hard to say. Asuran Fist spamming. But you're going to have all these great results because you're understanding how your job fits in that role.
Yeah, and in regards to that same fight that we were using your ninja with Karambit, I mean, we had a dancer in that party that was doing feather step as well too, which was lowering the crit evasion that the mob has. So your DPS was increasing from that as well as the dancers, and then you'd put a warrior in that party that was also doing blunt damage as well too, and they would put up blood rage, which would also increase your crit, and for all of that to help out the entire party, which just increased the DPS while you had a dancer that was main healing as well as debuffing, just and also dishing out numbers because they were also using Karambit and just beating the heck out of this mob. Like, it was just so much damage just going out at once.
Yeah, and it's not jobs that you would normally think of, like, oh, when we're going to do a blunt fight, we got to take a monk. Like, we didn't have to take a monk. We had all these other jobs that can supply blunt damage because we understood these jobs and we understood the builds and how to properly utilize these pieces of gear and these sets to fill this specific role. I cannot talk today.
Neither of us can talk today.
This is the bus. Like, we're on the struggle bus here.
Well, it
The
is
DPS struggle bus.
I know it gets talked so much about. We're just like, yeah, it's fine. No, just kidding.
It's all good.
Because not
Everything's good.
only with DPSing do you, like you said, need to throw out those big numbers, but you also need to think of how much hate you're generating from all of those numbers and what happens when the mob turns and face you. Will you be able to either slow down your damage output in order for a tank to be able to get hate back, or be able to put on a damage taken minus set to be able to continue dealing out damage while something is facing you, or have your party members shift around to make sure no directional AoE isn't going to hit you while it's attacking this other DPS role.
Right. That was kind of what I was going to get, is even though you can switch to that DT and you can have that tanking build and you can sit there and take all the damage you want. How many other people just had to move and reposition because you took hate, and now the mob is doing conals the other way. We've talked about Procne a few times, where you can sit there and pretty much put all the damage into one direction because everything it does is conal. That thing turns, it's going to start one-shotting people because of all its conal stuff. It's just not a good time. So as a DPS, you have to understand that your role is to control your hate. If this is a mob that you don't want to be tanking, like, a lot of times people will sit there and just go ham on monk mobs, and then all of a sudden the monk turns to them, and not only are you getting beat in the face by 100 fisting monk and dynamis, you're also getting countered to the face because it's a monk mob and it's facing you, and then you just drop to the floor and you're like, oh, well, that's not good, because at the end of the day, dead DDs do no damage.
Hey, I take personal offense from that. I'm sorry my core pulled hate off your paladin. No, I'm just kidding.
See, I usually worry about your core and dread spikes.
Yes, that does happen quite a bit.
Your core really likes dread spikes.
It does. It swings a little too fast and likes to murder itself a whole lot. Or I look away from my screen for 2 seconds and I do pull hate on a monk mob and just get completely destroyed from counter. You know, that's both very valid things to think about.
Yeah.
But that's where we were talking about Thief being a really nice damage output, but what's also nice about Thief is they can deal damage without pulling that much hate because they can put that enmity on a paladin, let's say, or another tank. Yes, they do have to be careful if they go around to the paladin and there is a monk mob there that will still counter them, but they can put it on somebody else that may have a lot less hate. I know I've had people trick attack my Geomancer because I'm like, my Geomancer is basically maybe 10 on the list of enmity on this mob. So if they weapon skill with trick attack up on my Geo, yeah, it might turn for a second, smack her, and then turn back around because she's already lost enough hate from that weapon skill.
Yeah, and we're talking about damage types and everything else. One of the things that I've had a lot of fun with on my DPS, Sam, is just shooting with a bow. A lot of these jobs can utilize range damage. I mean, you think about ninja. Everybody's like, oh yeah, you can throw shurikens. That's not very fun because you don't have a weapon skill. You're just sitting there throwing shurikens. But they also get access to Uller, the ambuscade bow. So you've got that option as well. A lot of jobs have the ability to sit there with range damage and add that other aspect to the fight because, hey, maybe you don't want to be in close, but you don't just want to stand there like a bump on a log. So you'll sit there with a bow and shoot from a distance.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are slowly getting back into Ranger after they added Hover Shot to that class. And Hover Shot really, I love watching Mur play Ranger because it kind of fits his little thing of having to move constantly. But you really gain a huge boost to your damage because you do those little shuffles. I call it do the wiggle because that's what you do with Hover Shot is you got to use like move one yalm from where you were before. But it's like I've gone from doing like 1k shots on my Ranger to like 16k shots on my Ranger without aftermath up. And that's huge with how much stacks you can get through Hover Shot, just the amount of DPS that you can do on that job through ranging. So there are those times where you need to be away from a mob because it does such nasty close range AoE moves than having that range DPS. Or there's certain mechanics that you just want to avoid in general. Like for Fu, you have nullification that absorbs all your buffs and makes the mob do more damage the amount of buffs. So being able to have that range DPS where they can avoid being out of that 20 yalm radius of the mob and not be a detriment to the party is huge.
Yeah, and range or even samurai with range damage still has a lot of skill chain properties and can open a lot of light skill chains. So with doing that, you can enable your black mage, and maybe you don't want to be up close and you can't open that light skill chain from right next to the mob, but you still have that ranged ability to say, hey, I can bring my samurai and open lights for you over and over again just by shooting at range.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are so used to Corsairs doing just up and at 'em for Savage Blades, but they were originally built, and a lot of the gifts that they get are in regards to their range DPS as well. And they can dish out really good numbers, not just with death penalty doing lid and salute, but they could do great white damage with Armageddon. Or if they have foam and need to do physical weapon skills, they have that ability with that weapon as well too.
Yeah, just all the different things you can do is really fun. And again, it's not always about being the top DPS. Sometimes you have to sit there and be like, okay, maybe I need to throw out a stun, and you can throw out a Tachi Hobaku or a leg sweep or shoulder tackle or one of these other stun weapon skills, and that's what you're contributing to the group. And all of a sudden, you're raising everyone else's DPS because they don't have to worry about what's going to happen, or you can do these other things, or like we said, sometimes you have to switch to that complete tank up turtle build. You're enabling everybody else to still do damage and still pump the numbers because you're holding the mob and you're soaking up the damage. And maybe you're not the top DPS, but you enabled everybody else to do enough damage to kill it.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of people undermine Dark Knight as a job class because they do provide actually a lot in regards to not just DPSing with Last Resort and Soul Eater, but they can also steal buffs from the mob with Absorb Attribute. They can also absorb certain stats. So if they want to raise their strength but also lower it on the mobs, they could do Absorb Strength or Absorb Dex. They can also take the mob's accuracy with Absorb Accuracy and then also still provide the support in keeping uh, maybe a moment in time of this fight at a halt by stunning mobs. And I mean, they have two forms of stun. They have the actual spellcast stun, and then they also have weapon bash as well too that could just help prolong a period of time where it's just like one of those oh crap moments we need to stop or we need to kind of recover. They can cast those or use that ability.
So a lot of DPS goes into just really understanding what the group you're in and what the party setup you have needs. again, I go back to referencing Final Fantasy XIV, because when you play that game, you set up for a queue. You're queued as a DPS. You know you're going to go in. You know you're going to do your rotation. You know you're just going to have what you're going to do. With this, you're looking at a completely different group of people that are doing completely different things, and all of a sudden, maybe somebody's not taking care of the same things as they did last time, or maybe somebody is taking care of something else, and you can jump into that spot and say, okay, well, while you're doing this job, I can do this job because I know that my job can do this.
Yeah, and that's also what's really nice about Corsair is because they have their roles, they can really increase their damage in so many different ways if they just need to raise their attack just up a little bit more, or at least for the entire party, so that way they don't have that attack versus defense difference. They could do the chaos roll, or if you're just in a fight where you need to spam weapon skills, they could do Sam roll as well as um let me make sure. I believe
What?
it's allied rolls, which
Oh,
helps as the conserve TP as well too. So that way you could just spam out the weapon skills if needed.
yeah, I've seen a lot of times on your Corsair, something bad will happen and we need to kite or something, and you'll just throw up Dancer's Roll or something and sit there with Regen, or throw up Runus Roll, because we're just trying to minimize damage for a while. Like, understanding that it doesn't always have to be Sam Chaos, ram it down their throat. Yeah! It can also be, okay, let's take the time that we need to get this fight back under control. Let's use some defensive buffs. And that's what my role is, and that's what I need to do.
Yeah, and I do apologize. It was Miser's role is the save TP, Ally's role is the skill chain bonus one. So it's still useful depending on what you're doing. So just think of your roles and what you're utilizing them for. But yeah, there's a bunch of times we've been having to do that. Or if, like, depending on if you're in a mage party, you can also increase their DPS if they need more accuracy. You could do Warlock's roll. Or if they need more attack, you could do Wizard's roll in order to help that particular role in this party increase their damage as well too.
Yeah, which kind of brings us into core as a support role. And we talk about the support jobs. You kind of think of your main three, Bard, Core, Geo, and we've talked about how Bard can really just get into a little bit of everything. We talked about Bard as a tank. We talked about Bard as a healer. We didn't really even talk about Bard as a DPS, which it's really kind of shined in that role thanks to Odyssey. You're talking about a lot of Bards that have stepped into that role of doing some extra damage on Soul Sea farms, and as well as even some of the JLNMs, just because after you play your songs, you don't have a sub job, so you can't be in that support healer role. You can't be that taking off the NOS spells or using the NOS spells and stuff like that. You've got to do something. So you can whip out that Nagling, you can use that Karnwan Han, you can break out a Naeus, you can do whatever you need to do and add that extra DPS. But Bard also really shines as a support, of course, because that's really what its main intent is, but it can also do all these other things. So you think about even all the different songs. You can boost damage, you can boost defense, you can boost haste, you can boost regen, you can boost refresh, all of the different stats. There's all kinds of things you can do as a bard to properly utilize what you need. And there's times where you're going to be attack capped or something, or you're going to have all the buffs in the world that you don't need, or maybe a summoner's giving the stat buff, so you don't need to give stats. You've got a core and a geo that are giving chaos and fury, so you don't need that much attack. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, I can throw on some carols to give elemental resistance, or I can throw on a mini to all of a sudden, wow, we have more defense. This is really cool. Going back to evasion tanks, you need a bard to throw mambos on. There's just all these different ideas that you can take with a bard and with your support to fill the correct role that you need.
Yeah, and I think we just assume that nobody is attack capped and you just have chaos roll as well as war cries going out or just even berserk or soul eater being used. And it really does help a lot when the bard realizes that you are actually attack capped and you may not, like you said, have that summoner in party and can use your etudes to the full efficiency. Or, I mean, you can even use those when you're in magic parties, because a lot of people are like, oh, bards aren't helpful in magic parties. But they also do have etudes that increase your intelligence, which is very helpful in regards to mobs like Ongo, where there's that D-int problem that a lot of people have talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it right there. Warcry, like nobody thinks of warrior as a support job, but the huge TP bonus and the attack bonus that you get from using Warcry really can support a party in a different way that a lot of people don't think about. And a lot of people really
Yeah.
miss that Warcry when it's not around. And a lot of people scream at people when they overwrite that Warcry because it's a lot of help that comes from a full warrior using that Warcry.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that Warcry isn't useful when it comes from a non-warrior, because what you really do lose going from a non-warrior to a warrior is the TP bonus, or from a main warrior to a sub-warrior is the TP bonus that they gain from merits. But it still does give you at least a decent amount of attack. So after the main warrior's Warcry is down, please feel free to use your actual Warcry in a party just to help keep that attack increased.
Another thing people don't think about a lot, I mean, even you think about the Tumult Curator fight, the circles, like a paladin circles for undead, a samurai circles for demons, Dark Knight, I believe, is Arcana. Like, you've got all these different circles, and then there's Beastmaster that does Killer Instinct. So you've got all these different supports that can come from each job, and each job can fill those support roles, and you can be like, I kind of want to bring this job just for this extra damage of their support, not so much just because they're going to come as a DPS. And that's one of the reasons that Sam is really good for Tumult Curator, because it's going to put out the damage just like everybody else, but it's also going to have those circles and the other Sam ability that like lowers accuracy and evasion for demons. I can't put my finger on that one.
What the actual circle
It's
is called for samurai? Is that what you're
it's
trying to
Hamanoha.
remember?
Hamanoha lowers accuracy, evasion, and magic accuracy, magic evasion, and TP gain for demons. So it does a
Yeah, I mean,
lot.
even just using warding circle in general is also still very helpful in itself as well too. But I know we've used Sepulcher in regards to Vinipata recently, helping people get a Aeonics because of it being an undead mob as well too.
Yeah. Even Paladin can come in here, and of course you're going to bring the support of the cures, but you also have Intervene and Holy Circle, and like you said, Sepulcher. So there's all these extra things that each job can do to support everybody else. It's not just about what you're doing and how do you support your own damage, it's how you support the party.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, speaking of Sepulcher in regards to undead mobs, a lot of people forget that using banish spells can also help reduce the damage penalty against those undead mobs. So, like, if you're using a piercing weapon against bones, it can help reduce that resistance by 50% on that particular mob when you use banish. And there are equipment pieces that can also enhance that effect as well, too.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think of that. I'm honestly one of them. I try to make sure that I do it as much as I can, but I will say that when we pull skeletons, a lot of me does forget about banishing. But of course, we're bringing clubs, so yeah.
Yeah, but it is still really nice, just in case if people don't have those classes that can utilize a blunt
Sure.
object in order to take those mobs down. I mean, a lot of people get worried with Thief. They're like, I only have Thief as my main job class. Well, if you have a white mage or a paladin in your party, you can utilize this ability with your spells to be able to help this additional person that may be working on other jobs in order to help your group in general, but this is the main one that they have geared and utilized right now, that they can still participate in that particular fight with the damage output that you're hoping for.
And don't forget, thieves can also use Karambit. Build you that Karambit on your
Yep.
thief and get in there and punch some stuff. It's fun.
I mean, they have really nice crit
True.
as well too, so it definitely would work out. I know a lot of people think of summoners because of Astral Flow, Astral Conduit, and think that's the only thing they can do. But I mean, other than the main three that people see summoners used for, like Haste 2, Warcry, and as well
AP
as
bonus.
TP bonus, they can also provide other support as well too. I mean, we've used Carbuncle in order to do Pacifying Ruby to help reduce enmity off of some of our DPS classes so that way they don't pull hate like we've talked about before. We've used Fenrir in order to do impact when we don't have a Geomancer there to do debuff bubbles. Or if it just isn't utilized as much because of the nerf on Geo Bubbles as well as well too. Sorry, I was losing my voice there for a second. So they do have other means that they can assist with. I know you can also do evasion down or attack down in some cases as well.
Yeah, they also come all with unique favors. So when they're out, they give a specific aura to the party, and I know that the subtle blow from Siren is really useful as well.
Yeah, for sure. Especially getting a similar one for all ability with their magic defense that she can put up also can be very nice when needed. And I know a lot of people also use Kate Sith for Mewing Lullaby to help with TP reset as well, which can help overall in the party not take as much damage.
The Mew Mew cat. The good old Mew Mew cat. I think Siren also gets Massacre Elegy, doesn't she? I thought she got some kind of slow. I don't know why.
She gets something called Bitter Elegy. It's a 50% slow because Massacre is 100%.
Yeah, she gets
slow.
Bitter Elegy.
So
it's a 50% slow. You're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's still a nice thing to go with, and it's also an elegy, so it's not just an actual slow. So you can still use slow 2 and have the Bard song as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of people, we were talking about how this particular class can fill really any role, but the dancer class as well, with all their different steps that they can provide. I mean, they can lower the evasion, they can lower their magic defense, they can lower the actual defense. And we talked about how they can also lower the crit evasion for the mob as well, too, which just helps support everybody, not only in just a party aspect, but an entire alliance if you're fighting the same mob.
Yeah, it's not just healing support, it's not just DPS, it's not just survivability. It's adding even that haste samba, which is really crucial for fencer warriors to hit that full JA haste. Not many jobs can bring JA haste for everyone. It's really rare to find. Actually, I don't know too many others that can.
Well, they can also help lower the evasion with Desperate Floors, putting that gravity type on there. And then they can also help with those oh crap moments like we were talking with Dark Knight with their stuns, doing Violent Flourish because they've lowered the magic evasion of the mob.
Yeah, and then you've also got Beastmasters that can come in with the slug and give attack down and defense down. And we talked about Killer Instinct a little bit when we were talking with the circles, and that's just adding that extra damage. And a lot of people don't like Beast because it's not going to bring the biggest and the baddest bunch of damage, but the amount of damage that a Beast can bring to an overall parse and an overall party is way more than bringing like another person with an R15 muffin. But you've got that Killer Instinct that can hit 3 or 4 other people in your party that are doing damage, and now those people are just pumping out even harder damage, and then the Beast is still in there. The Beast is still doing the enough damage to supplement and push over the level of basically them not being there and having somebody else.
Yeah, a lot of people are starting to use Beastmasters again because of the Odyssey with not having your sub jobs and being able to provide that additional support. But also with the Geo nerf, I shouldn't say nerf, but the Geo decrease within Odyssey, where the bubbles, the defensive, well, I shouldn't say defensive bubbles, but the lowering bubbles for in regards to a mob are 75% reduced, while Killer Instinct isn't and does give you that huge boost in regards to damage output on a particular mob. But then you have the slug, like you were talking about, that provides an even stronger defense down than the frailty would provide, even from an Idris Geo.
Yeah, I really do. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I really wish they'd just remove that. I don't think there's anything in Odyssey that Geo's going to break now that we've really kind of understood how everybody else. I mean, just I don't know if like Geo needs to be adjusted to where it's on par with the other supports and the other defense down givers. And I know it needs to be a little bit better because they have the Ergen weapon and everything like that. But when we really think about it, think about a Geo versus a Beast. Geo's got to be in very specific equipment to keep their Luopan alive, or they need to stay out of range to not get themselves killed as well. A Beast can sit there, bring still a large amount of defense down, and be a survival and have good survivability and pump out some good damage. Geo can't always do that in times. I mean, they can hit some nice black halos with Idris, but not too many of them are really switching out of the gear that protects their Luopan.
I mean, we've come up with different builds for at least my Geomancer in regards to being able to have the Lupon. Yes, it will take damage, but in order to have survivability with the Geomancer as well too, because there are instances where you need to be in fights where it's going to take a little bit more damage, but it will provide more of a boon for other people to have certain buffs while they aren't going to be those down bubbles like frailty or malaise. They may be more beneficial buffs like barrier and fury, or even just haste, depending on what your group is needing. And those geos are having to be in that fight in order to provide those bubbles for the actual party themselves. So you can manipulate it a little bit so that way you still gain that huge boost from a geo, even though the debuff or the down bubbles are having that 75% nerf. The actual increase ones are not. So utilizing that instead to really help utilize the party can change your actual builds for your Lupon as well too.
Yeah, I'd like to see Geo get a little bit more, maybe with their Empyrean stuff that gives the Master and the Luopan DT and region, stuff like that. Just to get them back, as well as just hopefully the new content doesn't have these same restrictions where Geo's just in some cases Geo is just like completely restricted to a pre-fight and trust bubble giver, and that's pretty much what Geo's used for. And there are still fights where Geo's useful, but it's definitely not to the level that it was. And I think there needs to be a happy medium, because Geo can fill a lot of different roles, even without its sub job. It's still got all these different, like you said, it's got all the different bubbles that can provide all these different things and fill the void of either maybe you don't have enough songs to put on that many, so you need that barrier. Maybe you're doing a ×3 farm and you need that haste from Indie Haste or whatever you need. The Geo can bring that, but it's almost at a hindrance to bring that job right now because there's only a select things that can do from its entire kit.
Yeah, it is kind of a bummer that they first nerfed it so much with the actual bubbles themselves, and then they're just like, oh no, it's still kind of too powerful for this content, so we're gonna make these sets of bubbles 75% lower than what they normally are in order to make it quote fair for everybody else. But at the same time, it does bring up those other jobs in order to be able to be utilized. Like, I don't think people would have used dancers as much or even beastmasters as much if geos were as viable as they are normally outside of Odyssey content. I mean, you do still have probably what I think of as one of the best enfeebling classes as a support job where you have Red Mage. It can provide really nice buffing abilities where it can give Phalanx 2 to any DPS while not having to have Sub Scholar. It can give Haste 2. It can give Flurry 2 for those range classes. But it can also provide Distract and Frazzle in order to help either physical or magical
And
DPS.
that really nice juicy Dia 3, which if you bring a Corsair as well, you can light shot it, make it even better, and really get to that defense down thresholds that you need to start hitting that PDIF.
Yeah, for sure. And it can still also do Paralyze 2 and Slow 2, which can help if somebody is tanking it or just make sure it doesn't really move at all for
Eh,
people. But we were also talking about skill chain focuses up in our DPS as well, where like having
mm,
DPS can provide additional. And as long as you're doing different weapon skills, you can use the skill chain bonus property in duration spell from Red Mage as well to help increase that damage as well.
Yeah, Red Mage has a
I'm gonna say as well a lot in this say, saying as well so much this round.
so much, so much. Maybe you'll get the comment this time.
Maybe.
Now I'll probably still get it somehow. But you also have Addle 2, you have Blind 2, all these different spells and abilities that Red Mage can bring that you just factor into your total success rate, and you're like, okay, we've got all these things working for us. What can go wrong?
Yeah, in regards to Adel too, we bring that one up a lot when we do Kin or if you do Ronnie in old Abyssia era, and having it being able to take longer to cast those spells, which allows your actual DPS doing physical just to go ham on this mob to provide as much DPS while it's just casting. And I always love it when I see the ancient magic comes up on mobs and Adel 2 is on a mob because it just sits there forever and your DPS is just wailing on this
Yeah,
mob.
it's a good time. And you talk about the Paralyzed 2 and the Slow 2 and the Silences and the Blinds and stuff like that. That's where these other support jobs as well, like your Bards and your White Mages and Scholars and other mages that have Paralyze and Slow and all that other stuff can help with immuno breaks. Or you can support that Red Mage in being that big support and landing these bigger tier enfeebles because you're hitting those immuno breaks and letting the Red Mage land their spells easier. So now you're taking a support and supporting a support. So you've got a support that's supporting a support that's supporting the party that's supporting a support that's supporting the party.
That's a tongue twister. I'm surprised you got that
I'm
far.
really impressed. If you could see me patting myself on the back and my shit-eating grin, you'd love it. But then you've also got with immuno breaks, you can talk about bards that we didn't talk about as their trinities or thrinities or however you want to pronounce it. If you can switch those around so much, especially when you're on bard and you don't have a support job and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Oh, my red mage wants to land paralyzed too. Let me do an ice thrinity. Oh, my red mage needs to land silence. Let me throw the wind thrinity on. And then as the red mage is going and doing different debuffs, you're just changing these thrinities and changing these weaknesses, and all of a sudden you're supporting the support. I'm not doing it again. But you're being that support and you're filling that role that you need to get all these buffs on that you rely on for your strategies to work. Because when you're making a strategy, you're thinking about every job you're bringing, and you have to think about everything that they're bringing to the table. You can't just think about, okay, well, we only need a red mage for haste. Well, I don't think anybody invites a red mage to a party and it's just like, okay, well, after you cast haste, you can go watch YouTube or sit in the corner or wait. Just whenever your haste wears off, make sure you put it back on. And that's all you want them to do. There's always more. You've got dispels, you've got enfeebles, you've got all the different things.
Yeah, so many different jobs can provide so many different things in a party, and just learning all the aspects or even just like trying different aspects that you're like, oh, people say this doesn't really work, and seeing if you're able to make it work. Or if you never heard of somebody trying it before on that particular job, just throwing it together and seeing if it works, being like, hey guys, I know we're used to having so and so do this, but I want to try this out and see if they'll let you do it. I mean, some groups are more open. I know whenever we talk about doing link shell events, when people want to bring oddball jobs, we're like, sure, let's get them in there and see what we can do.
Yeah, and we even tonight or the last time we did Omen, I was trying out for puppet tanking for the first time, and I'd never done it before, so I still brought a paladin in my group because his role was, okay, if this screws up and if I screw this up somehow, you're there to take hate and get back in it. And he was able to get paladin cards and do whatever he needed to do, but he could fill other roles and sit there and heal. And we were doing omens, so he could do the cures as far as for the objective. So there were other roles that paladin could fill when we didn't need him to fill the main tank role. Another thing people really don't think about is your sub job. But your sub job choice is really, really a really, really big deal. Like we've talked about sub scholar a lot for what sub scholar can bring, but bringing sub ninja sometimes to bring shadows, bringing sub dancer to bring that extra haste samba or some healing. One of my favorite things to do for Dynamis, at least, when you bring a Geo, is to bring him sub Black Mage, because all of a sudden they're getting all these extra sleeps. And yes, you can come sub Scholar as well, but when you bring a sub or a Geo sub Black Mage, they're getting all this sleepka power that doesn't rely on that stratagem. And it gives them a way to target and get their claim on every single mob as well, so their bubbles are hitting everything.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's really hard on the Geomancer with how fast Dynamis Divergence can go, with having to make sure that bubble is within range of everything, that they could throw it out in the middle with manually controlling it instead of placing it on a specific mob. And then, like you said, casting that AoE spell in order to hit everything, to have some sort of hate mechanic to have that bubble affect everything for the entire alliance. But in regards to damage dealers, I know Sub Dragoon has been more recently talked about because, one, it does help with your enmity. I mean, you can use your jumps to help remove some of it. It may not remove a whole bunch, but at least it does help in regards to being able to keep it under control. It also does provide, when you get to those higher level master levels, of having weapon skill damage plus on there as well too, which is very nice for a lot of those DPS classes as well.
Yeah, your sub can really influence what you're doing. I mean, I was just looking at my samurai who is currently sub dragoon right now, and we get the ancient circle, or I think it's called ancient circle, whichever one does for dragon damage. So you get extra damage to dragons just from being sub dragoon. And yeah, you usually do it for the weapon skill damage, but now you have that extra level of support because you changed your support job. And yeah, as sub warrior, you're going to get that war cry, you're getting provoke, you're getting these other things to support the party in that way. So and there's even times when you want a sub ranger because you need to be that range damage focus, and you need to be the best range class that you can be as a samurai. Yeah, you're usually not going to outparse a ranger. There's going to be times you could, but you're still adding that extra bit of damage, and you have the right support job to support what you're doing in the party.
Yeah, and then if you're looking into survivability, you could also go sub dancer to be able to gain all those curing waltzes, including healing waltz. And with higher level masters, you are able to get what's called contra dance, which is basically the divine seal for your waltzes as well too. So even though you might not have very good waltz potency on those particular DD classes, you can still use contra dance if you have those oh crap moments and you're in critical HP to help cure yourself up with curing waltz 3.
Yeah, sub rune is also a really cool sub job, just because you get the runes for magic defense, you get valiance, you get flug, you get all the different enmity tools, but you get flash. Like, there's a lot of cool things that sub rune can bring. So think about your sub jobs, think about what you're doing. Like I said, I like to play around with red mage sub paladin. Nobody thinks about that. My crazy weird self does. But when you're doing these sub jobs, Even when I was tanking Foo, I think it was, whichever one does ebullient nullification, I subbed White Mage on Karm, and it's not just because I wanted to have sub White Mage on Pup. It was because I can sit there and buff myself and make sure that I give myself enough buffs and be self-sufficient in order to have Foo take those buffs from me, and I don't have to worry about somebody else giving me really potent buffs or taking time out of what they're doing, because my support job can support what I'm doing.
I was trying to think of some other support jobs that are very useful. I mean, you do see people doing standard sub warrior and sub samurai, depending on if you're single handed or if you are two-handing weapons in order to get a higher DPS output as well too, with Hasso lowering your weapon delay for those two-handed weapon users to make them be able to push out numbers faster with the store TP as well.
Don't forget Paladin Sub Summoner for all of your mewing pleasure.
For the last month's ambuscade with Katurbs, that was great.
Ninja Sub Dark for a lot of AoE hate control with Poison Gun as well as stun. Red Mage Sub Dark was a big thing back in the day because it added that stun and you get the chain spell stun. We use Sub Thief for one of the helms, right? In Rising Jima?
For one of the... yes, for Aranis, a lot of people that don't have main thief can use sub thief to be able to still do the sneak attack, trick attack. While it doesn't gain the full bonus of it, it's still useful for DPS output when you need that accuracy bonus.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Sub Blue a lot as well, and Sub Blue is great for enmity control. It's one of my go-tos, pretty much the go-to sub on Paladin, just because it gives you that ability to AoE hate control.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, and people can even utilize the job traits from Blue Mage as a sub job in different ways instead of just as a paladin. Well, I shouldn't say just as a paladin, but just as a tank subclass as well too. And it's really just coming a long way with master levels being able to help those sub jobs in regards to leveling it up. I mean, we talked about how you gain Cure 4 with Scholar either as a subclass, and that really changed the dynamic of that sub actually being utilized by more classes.
Yeah, you talk about, I mean, even between my Rune Fencer and my Paladin, my slash blue spells are a little bit different just because my Paladin focuses a lot more on the HP bonus of my sub blue spells, but my Rune Fencer wants to take more advantage to get that defense bonus that Paladin has a lot more easily for the physical damage. So it's thinking about how your sub job supports you and how your sub job allows you to get into these different situations a lot easier.
Yeah, I know Odyssey does take away from the sub job aspect, but definitely there's every other content other than Odyssey to really think about how your sub job can be utilized and what it can help provide on that specific role that you're filling in your party.
Yeah, but to kind of round everything up with this, the real big thing that we want to get across is just getting everybody to think more about what you're doing with your job and not just go in there with a blank mind of this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it. It's sitting there and looking at your group, knowing the people that you're playing with. Sometimes you don't know the people you're playing with and you have to change on a dime. But being that all-around player that people want you in their group because you're able to fill any role that they need. You don't always have to be the main puller, or you don't always have to be the main tank. You don't always have to be the main DPS. You always don't have to be the main healer. But when the time comes and you're needed to fill that role, you know how to step into each of these roles, and you know when it's time to do it. Because being in that role at the wrong time can really kind of throw a wrench into things if you have two people trying to do the same role, and you're like, now we're just kind of contradicting each other.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely also just experiment with your job. Really get to know the ins and outs of what you can do. What can any sub job really provide to your job, if anything, and just have fun with what you're doing and enjoying the job that you're playing as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people will go around and tell you, oh, you need to build a tank, you need to build a healer, you need to build a DPS, you need to build a support job so you can fill every role. Like when we look at this list of jobs on the tank and the healer, the DPS, and the support, most of these jobs can fill every single role. It's not just building one job for each role. It's understanding how your one job that you enjoy playing more than anything can fit into each of these roles, and you can utilize that job in that instance and still say, hey, I'm going to bring this job. Honestly, I would rather have somebody that is really passionate about their job than somebody who's just playing that job because they need to fill that role. Like a job that is wanting to fill that role and taking that job to the next level, and just really being passionate about what you're doing is a lot better than a person who like has been burned out on playing a job. You talk about the good old days of bards and thieves and career white mages that are just like, this is all I play. Like, find different ways to fill these roles differently so they can get off those jobs, or find a way to utilize that job in a different manner so they can have a little more fun with it, or utilize your job in that different manner and say, okay, well, I'm going to try this with this job, and now I'm still filling this role, but now I can do this as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even with us just talking about Dancer being able to fill all of these things, it is sad to see a lot of people discredit Dancer and say that it's not a very good job class when it really is. And it needs some love. So don't just think that all of the jobs that people are just kind of pushing aside. Sometimes they just need to see somebody that really loves that job and just puts so much effort into it and being like, yes, I can do this type of damage output, or yes, I can provide you these types of support in regards to either healing or debuffing a mob in itself, or just being able to enhance the party. Like they just need to be able to see somebody that puts their heart and soul into this job that they particularly love and just bring it from the dark place that people say, oh, it's terrible, don't use it, that it can be used for really a lot of different things.
And it's one of those things where it brings, like, it's fun. It brings a new level of interest into what you're doing because you see a random red mage trying to tank something, or you see a ninja going into a giant AoE polling zone, and you're like, what the heck is this? How the heck is this person going to do it? You start watching really closely, and you're like, wait, how's this working? How's this going on? And people start getting interested, and people start thinking, hey, maybe I can do that with my job. And all of a sudden, you get a bunch of people that are curious about different ways to play the game, and it's not just the same old thing over and over again. It's different things, it's different strategies, it's different jobs, it's different people filling different roles, so you're not just trapped every night as the main healer or the main tank if you don't like tanking, or if you're the main DPS and you're just like, sometimes I just want to sit back and be a support. Maybe that's the mood you're feeling one night. You're like, I kind of want to be a support tonight. Find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. But we appreciate everybody who came out to listen to us today, and we really hope that you're able to think about how you can fill a role in a party or in a type of event or monster battle. And we hope you enjoy that job that you're in playing.
Yeah, and if anybody has any ideas for different podcasts, send us an email, come in our Discord, drop us an idea in here. We're not like running out of content or anything, but we're thinking about starting job episodes soon, and this was one of the things I wanted to do before we really get into specific job episodes, is thinking about jobs as a whole and all the different roles. Like we've talked about gear swaps, we've talked about now knowing your role as a job or whatever you're doing in a party. Now we can really get into the meat and bones of each job, and it's like we have this solid base. So I think we're in a good direction, but if you guys have another idea that you would like us to go over or like us to talk about, we're all about the community and supporting those ideas. So please drop us a line, drop us an email, pop in the Discord, talk to us, ask us questions. And honestly, half the time we don't even have to answer. There's enough people in this Discord that can answer it as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And we also do have some videos that we put up every Wednesday on our YouTube channel that's just supposed to be helpful for people with little tips and tricks. And we're also going to be coming out with notorious monster farming as well as ways to get through certain content as well too, whether it be low man or just talking about the mechanics of different fights.
Yeah, I'm excited for all
It's
the
going to be super
content.
fun.
It's going to be a good time. And especially for all the new content that SC is going to give us, because we might have a whole lot of new topics that we need to address before we get into jobs and stuff like that. Because the update might come, and holy crap, we need to start talking about something completely new.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Imperium +2 +3 content that's going to be coming out, as well as the new accessories. We'll see if those accessories are going to be upgrades to either the old Dynamis accessories, the old Empyrean accessories, or if they're going to be brand new accessories in general. I'm super excited, and every time I read new content in regards to this new event that's coming out, makes me more and more excited.
Absolutely. Your excitement is rising to the next level.
No.
Oh, it happened. And at the end of the
It
day,
happened.
we've reached the end of the day. And I want to thank everybody for listening to my cringiness.
Our cringiness. We were both cringy today.
Did
Not
we
in a
take
terrible way.
cringiness to the next level though?
I
Or did
think
I
we
just do it
did
there?
as well. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out with us. We hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, or night. Thank you again for listening to us, and see you guys next time. Bye-bye!
Later, y'all.